So, a very good afternoon to all of you. I welcome you all to the session on cooling cities and how we are going to design our future cities and make it more climate resilient and ensuring that we are able to look at how the extreme heats that has emerged as one of the most pressing climate concerns, especially in the cities where the urban heat island effect has is making this issue even more compounding because the cities are getting heated up and the city temperatures are 3 or 4 degrees higher than the outside. So we all know that urbanization will happen at a very fast pace, especially in the emerging economies. For that, it is very important that we look at it not only as a challenge but as an opportunity, how we design the cities of future which have embedded the climate resilient part into our designs as well as the policies. Uh, the frequency and the way the adversity of the heat waves is intensifying year by year. I think we all are witnessing that it is affecting not only the health productivity but also the kind of energy consumption that may be required in the future cities. And this is going to largely affect the marginalized communities. And when we are talking about the low income housing groups that are going to be coming up as new cities of tomorrow. So with this in mind, I would like to introduce you to the panel that we have today. But before we begin that, we have a small presentation of what we do. So I would like to invite my colleague Akash Deep from GRIHA Council to tell you a little bit about the kind of activities that we do at GRIHA Council and Terry, and how we support the various government initiatives and take forward the implementation framework of climate resilient designs in India. So over to you, Akash.
Thank you, Shabnam, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the session on cooling the cities. As Shabnam said, we at GRIHA Council work closely in India with all the buildings and infrastructure program to measure their impacts of various implementation done for various strategies. So GRIHA is basically a tool to facilitate evaluation throughout the life cycle of a building or a infrastructure, the design, the construction, operation, and maintenance, how they have created these things, and how it can be measured in its sustainability impact. It is created by a ministry which is called the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy and TERI, and it was claimed as a national green building rating for our country, and we are implementing it to measure carbon emission reduction in the built environment. The basic principle is what gets measured gets managed. As we all know, if you want to manage any specific thing, measurement becomes very important. And without measurements, you can't show impact of various measures. As he said, in a building, you have 4 basic stages: design, construction, operation, and maintenance. GRIHA makes sure the process itself becomes sustainable rather than the output which we are targeting. If the process is sustainable, the end result will automatically be sustainable itself. We have multiple accolades which we have gained throughout the year. We started in 2007, and now with an international rating agencies accepting GRIHA as one of the evaluation tool to provide incentives, both in terms of financial as well as other incentives. It gives us immense pleasure that its credibility has been accepted throughout the globe now. This is one of the examples which we have from the states in Punjab and in India. Basically, as we all know, cooling is one of the major requirements in our buildings, both in the main across the country itself. So this is one of the very interesting building which has it's 100% passive cooling, so there's no air conditioning. It's designed as a big desert cooler. It has all modern facility. It's an office space for the government over there. It is having a national heating in terms of on the southern facade. And so on the glass facade, which you see, it has heating done throughout the day. There are solar vents which are created on that facade so that the heat which is trapped goes out from the vents and create a negative pressure. What this building does, interestingly, if you see on the top right photographs, they do misting in the central courtyard, which makes sure that the central courtyard becomes cooled automatically. And there's a draft created from that central courtyard to these office spaces because of that heat exhaust being created throughout the day. And that all is that which cools that building throughout the year. So no air conditioning, and it's passively cooled building. The bills for that building is less than 1,000 rupees bucks in a month. So very interesting example. This is also a building which has net positive in terms of water during the monsoon season. During the three months of monsoon, the water is stored and it is reused throughout the building, even for drinking itself. So very good examples how design play a key role in creating our buildings and cities sustainable without an excessive cost, because sustainability is always linked to excessive cost. So, sorry. Okay. So these are the impact numbers which have been created by us. So around 6,000 buildings across India are now registered and taking a GRIHA rating, out of which 1,700 buildings are already rated, because of which there are huge numbers which have been created in terms of renewable energy installed in standalone each of the buildings, water saved, energy saved, and carbon emissions saved. And that's a basic impact numbers which actually make the whole system very credible for the government and for India to showcase its initiative on the global platforms. And on that, I'll give back the incentives to Shabnam. Thanks. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Akash, for that introduction to GRIHA. And Akash, do we have the slides on the smart surfaces work? So, so this is another project that Terry initiated, and this is a research work. And this is a work that we did with the Smart Surfaces Coalition US, and that was funded by MacArthur Foundation. And the idea of doing this work was that at the city level, we all agree that, be it the cool roofs, the smart roofs, the solar photovoltaics, and the other policies that can help to bring down the city temperature to a great extent. However, they are very generic in form and they're not specific to one city. So this funding that came to us, we use this to develop this analytical engine. The data that we collected from the city, be it the tree covers or be it the kind of water bodies they had, the kind of infrastructure they had. So they all were taken into account and customized solution was prepared for the city. So what helped to develop this was the kind of we brought in all the stakeholders, be the municipal corporation or the city councillors, and it helped us to collect data at that level. And based on this data, and once this gets implemented, the idea is that we will be able to bring down the city temperature to almost 3 degrees once this gets implemented. So this is a small work that I wanted to share with you. And these are the kind of results that we have been able to achieve. And this is a city in India, that's the Bhopal city. And this is a smart city that has, we have tried to incorporate all the features that you see on the side to this city and ensured that we have a customized solution for this city. So I just wanted to bring this to your notice that this is the kind of initiatives that we need at the city level and provide those customized solutions so that we can bring in those implementation at the city levels. So with this, now I would like to introduce my panel to you. So I would like to first introduce the co-host of this session, Karan, to the panel. And Karan has been a climate change professional for over 17 years. And he has specifically worked for over 12 years in energy efficiency and climate change policy advisory and consultancy. He is currently, of course, with ISA as a partnership and strategy specialist. And prior to this, he's worked with World Bank and UNEP. And he has been heading the climate change team at Terry as well. And his responsibilities included providing policy advocacy on climate finance, carbon market, GHG inventories, and of course, energy audits and transition and UNFCCC and Montreal Protocol issues. So I welcome you, Karan, to the panel. No, you can sit down. Thank you, Karan, for joining us for this discussion. Our next panelist is Mr. Kennedy, and Kennedy Methika is currently working at the Ministry of Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development in Kenya, where he holds the position of Deputy Director for Building Safety and Climate Resilience. Additionally, he acts as National Coordinator for issues pertaining to buildings and climate and serves as a senior country representative at the Intergovernmental Council for Buildings and Climate, with Kenya is currently the Global Vice Chair. I welcome you to the session. I welcome Grammy Medment, and he has worked in cooling for almost 42 years now and is professor of heating and cooling at London South Bank University, as well as technical lead for cooling at the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero in UK government. He is here representing the International Institute of Refrigeration and the Cool Coalition. I welcome you to the panel also. Next we have Meena uh, Hasman, and she leads the SOM Sustainability and Wellbeing Operations, focusing on long-term vision and strategy for achieving excellence in practice. As the chair of SOM's Climate Action, she oversees and directs the firm's progress on climate action as it relates to its global business operations and projects. As a practice leader of Sustainable Engineer Studio, she spans a wide variety of projects in Europe, UK, Asia, Middle East, and bringing a deeper understanding of implications of sustainable and equitable design in different climatic and social and regulatory contexts. I welcome you also to the panel, please. Last but not the least, I would like to call upon Charu. She's the director at Climate and Clean Energy. Charulata directs the climate and clean energy work at NRDC India, focused on supporting and advancing India's clean energy transition and leading NRDC's India's global climate engagement initiative. She has more than 15 years of experience in climate policy and clean energy and has worked in various sectors on climate change mitigation and adaptation. Charu, welcome you also to the panel. So thank you all for joining us for today's panel discussion. And I'm sure the kind of, the experience that we will share, it will help us to understand. The discussions will practically focus on the pathways and the innovation frameworks to integrate the heat resilient design policy and technology into the urban planning of tomorrow. So with this, my first question would be to my co-partner and co-host to this panel, to Karan. So ISA is a global platform, advancing solar deployment in the member nations, and they play a catalytic role in enabling the policies. So Karan, with your experience, what policy and governance measures would help the industry as well as the countries to ensure that the climate resilience becomes part of the urban planning and not just an afterthought?
Thank you, Shabnam, and first of all, thank you very much for being a partner to ISA and inviting me to the panel as well. At ISA, we are working on everything that is solar, be it rooftops, be it cold storages, and all of that. But I will answer this through an experience of mine of when we were designing the cooling action plan. And more than a policy issue, it was an institutional issue. Within India, cooling was looked at upon by 8 or 9 ministries. And they were looking at various aspects of cooling. Somebody looking at refrigerant consumption, somebody looking at building design, Ministry of Commerce looking at cold storages and all of that. The idea of the cooling action plan was to bring them all together. Hello? Yeah, the idea of the cooling action plan was to bring them all together so that there is one place in a non-binding arrangement to take complementary action. Hello? Now, I'll tell you the challenges that we faced when we were doing that. I think the initial challenge of putting in a policy mechanism was that while you have efficient cooling solutions that are technologically available or bringing into the design part of what you were doing and showing in GRIHA also, the more efficient or the better design building has an initial price hump. While it repays back over the lifetime, to get over that initial price hump, you need to design smart incentives. It could be a mix of concessional financing loans. The second thing of designing policy things is again out of experience was that financing does not follow plans. Financing follows projects. And looking at embedding cooling into, let's say, the low-income housing scheme of India, and looking at that delta cost that could be funded through some of these things was, an essential aspect of what you were doing there. I think the third part goes down into the city and state level policies of municipal bylaws, that you start to embed these design considerations in the municipal bylaws. I think India has a great experience of the energy conservation building code, which now also incorporates the sustainability parameters in it. But all of these needs a long drawn, persistent and a patient approach. So, there is no one size fits all. It has to be a mix of institutional setup and a mix of well-designed incentives that promote this behavior change.
I think very well said that incentives, mechanisms, as well as the financial mechanisms, as well as how we roll out in the states, it becomes very important to see how the policies get implemented. So thank you for bringing that perspective, Karan. So I would like to go to Mr. Kennedy. And I think with the experience that you have of working in the government, I would like to know that the kind of impact that the heat waves have and the heat-related illness that we will be seeing worldwide, it becomes extremely important that we draw out these kind of plans, and would like to know from your experience that how is Kenya addressing this heat stroke threats, and which areas or sectors would need more attention and focus so that we are better prepared for these kind of changes.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Kennedy from Kenya. Back in Africa, we have different climatic conditions or regions that really gives different perspectives in how you create local solutions for each of those regions. We have the mountainous regions, we have the coastal regions, we have the plains and the tropics, and therefore all this gives different perspectives. Of importance is to realize that we need to create what we are calling local solutions for local problems. And I think that is the basis of adoption of solar as an alternative energy source in most of our areas. And therefore, as we carry out this process, it is important for us to see how then do we make use of the local communities, local population, to create local investment plans, local empowerment plans for themselves, so that they are able to utilize the local skills and expertise they have, so that there's a sustainability component in the projects and in the procedure and even in the adoption of the new technologies that we are talking about. It is also important to realize that we need to also harness more of stakeholder engagement, which is more inclusive, which is more engaging, so that the very solutions that we create then is encompassing, it's all engaging in a manner that every party to the process of social economic development in a given area is part of this bigger process. So as we also carry out this process, it's also important to note that local capacity development is a key component for us to realize the developments that we want in these regions. So how then do we carry out local capacity development and initiatives to ensure that the local leaders, the local persons and local members of the community are part of the bigger picture? So that initiative itself creates an enabling environment so that every member of the society and the community is part of the conversation that we are looking into. As we carry out collective development, there is also an opportunity of co-creating different solutions for different people, for different localities. And that is a key component as we are developing solutions for the local communities. As we are also coming up with these local solutions, also important is to note that we need to see how we nurture and support local leaderships, local champions, so that they can drive most of the economic agenda beyond, the project lifeline. And that is a better way of managing and dealing and ensuring that whatever solutions are created then has the champions that can move forward. As we create all these solutions, remember there are strategic interventions of the communities so that they are in a position to deal with the issues that they face, whether these are on heat loss, whether these are on that affect their agricultural issues, that affect their health. And therefore, it is important for all of us as we carry out this process to ensure that we engage the local communities, the local members of the society, so that they create local solutions as far as local innovations and technologies that are required in that given locality is concerned. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much. And I think very well said that most of the implementation would happen at the local levels. And unless we prepare a well-knit these stakeholders at the ground level, we will keep talking about these kind of strategies, but they will never see the light of the day. So I think the participation of the communities, the local leaders, as well as how we strengthen their the way they are going to implement these at the local levels, I think this becomes extremely important in terms of how the policies are thought about and how we are looking at the more implementable solutions at the ground level. So thank you for bringing that perspective. I would like to little bit shift towards the technology now, and Grammy, with your experience, considering that the cooling loads are, of course, going to be the most essential part of the kind of cities that we are going to see tomorrow. So, how do you think that we reintegrate the passive features into the projects and make our projects more resilient, and which also helps to, of course, reduce the energy demand in the long run?
Thanks very much. Hi, everyone. I'm Graham. I'm from the UK, and I'm from London. Who's been to London? No, some people say they have, some people haven't. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about London, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about local leadership in London, building on what Kennedy's just been talking about. So in London, we have something called the London Plan, and the London Plan is used to construct buildings, and it uses an energy hierarchy. And it's quite simple. Look it up. It's really useful. It uses this energy hierarchy called, I'd have to remember it, to be precise. Be lean, be clean, be green, and be seen. Okay, I'll repeat that again. Be lean, be clean, be green, and be seen. And what that means is, the first bit, being lean, means to reduce demand. Okay. The second bit is to be clean, use energy as efficiently as possible. Be green, use renewable energy, and be seen, to be monitoring and maintaining. Okay. And it's really important that those four things go together. The first one, however, is be lean, reduce demand. And that plays very much into your question. Okay, what do we need to do? First and foremost, in our building design, we need to be lean. And I was really excited to see the presentation at the beginning from GRIHA, and Akash presented on some really great projects. 100% passive cooling, one building, which I'm assuming it's in India. Okay, it's a tremendous thing to do, and well done. And then we had the pavements that were self-cooling pavements as well. Okay. And these are technologies that we've had for many, many years. And often if we go back to our ancient forefathers, we go back to Egypt. If you go back to Egypt in many thousands of years ago, they didn't have air conditioning, but they used to cool their homes, and they used to cool their homes passively. And we need to go back to that. And you gave some really good examples of how we do that. So thanks very much for sharing it, and thanks very much for the question.
Thank you. And I think I love this, the clean, green, and the lean. The three aspects are so important in the way we design our projects and how we look at the cities of tomorrow. And definitely, what you mentioned, that energy efficiency or sustainability is not something that we started today. We had been designing, through the passive features, previously. I think we just need to bring back that knowledge again, and we have to start rethinking the way we have designed our buildings of the past. So thank you for bringing that perspective for us. So I'll go to, the architecture community now, and, we have just heard that how the passive features can bring a great difference to the buildings of tomorrow. So as per you, Meena, how could you share that your organization and how you are trying to bring this sustainability to the clients and in approaching the urban heat island effect through the design and the policy interventions?
Thank you so much for that question. I think I'm going to answer it in two parts. I'm wearing two hats today, one of as an environmental engineer and architect from SOM. So I will talk about briefly the design interventions that we're doing in our projects to address the urban heat impact and minimize heating demand, cooling demand, but maximize cooling passively in cities. And then the second hat I'm wearing is the representative of the Royal Institute of British Architects, where there is possibly the ideas of capacity building and upskilling to be able to ensure that the solutions we may be seeing out there in other places around the world can be effectively translated with the right local knowledge. And this touches upon a couple of the points that were raised by the panelists before. So in terms of design interventions, I think I cannot emphasize enough the passive design it should be at the heart of every decision that any architect is taking and any urban planner is taking, and so are we at SOM. So in projects, we're looking at local solutions and understanding what is most effective for that local context, because it's not just the one size does not fit all, and we cannot just say we're going to introduce a blue-green infrastructure here, or we're going to introduce green planting, sort of urban greening, to be able to maximize passive cooling as much as possible, because in some instances, urban greening is not as effective, or not the vegetation type is not suitable for that solution to be a local strategy. But I think that's a given, and I take that as a given, and I hope that's a given that everyone has that knowledge, as mentioned by Graham earlier, that it's almost that we need to unlearn what we have learned over the years in terms of technological interventions and go back to the basics and the fundamentals of passive design, which can make a significant improvement. But I think the innovative side of design interventions that we're seeing today and employing in our projects at SOM is this microclimate urban modeling. So we're actually leveraging technology from that perspective to be able to understand multiple parameters that exist in a specific site and context. It's not just about heat when we're talking about urban cooling or comfort at urban scale, because there's many various parameters that play into making the final informed decisions. Because sometimes Akash has given us the examples of buildings that incorporate natural ventilation to maximize passive coolings, but natural ventilation is not a viable solution in every context, because if the air quality is really bad, then that is not the most effective solution. So we need to find other interventions. And for that reason, we need to have a very holistic understanding of the local context, and perhaps even a futuristic scenario of what that local context is going to look like. And so we use a lot of microclimate modeling to be able to enable us as designers and planners to make informed decisions. So I think that's probably the innovative sides of design that I see emerging, not only in our practice, but in many practices around the world. And maybe just briefly, I'll mention, I iterated the importance of holistic knowledge and understanding around multiple parameters. And now I'm wearing my RIBA hat. And at the RIBA, I'm helping them to define their sort of holistic climate literacy. So if any architect around the world or designer is introducing a climate solution, that it is very much grounded in understanding the impact of that solution in multiple parameters, looking at human comfort, looking at energy and carbon, looking at biodiversity and ecology, water, waste. So there are multiple parameters that needs to be looked at. And that's why RIBA is introducing this sort of upskilling programs and capacity building programs platforms to be able to help inform those decisions and inform policies that come into architecture practices. Thank you.
So definitely, upskilling is something that's extremely important to today's design, and also emphasizing that how our designs needs to be contextual and, not one size fits all. I think that's quite relevant to, the buildings of tomorrow, and we need to be more realistic and, practical in the way we designs the buildings of tomorrow. So thank you for bringing that perspective as well. So Charu, we all agree that data is something that's extremely important in the way we look at, how we design. And these numbers help us to not only choose better, but also help us to design better. And GRIHA also believes in this policy of what gets measured, gets managed. So how in your context, you are looking at data-driven solutions at the city levels to help citizens prioritize, look at the vulnerable zones and how they can look at the various policies and prioritize what goes first and make those solutions more implementable.
Thank you. Thank you, Shabnam. And thanks to Terry and ISA for having me here. I'm Charu Lata. I'm the Director for Climate and Clean Energy at NRDC India. And thank you for asking this very, very relevant question on data. Let me answer this in the context of the work that we've done on heat action plans. As you all might know, a lot of cities across the world now have heat action plans to deal with extreme heat. In India, back when we started this work in 2015 with the first city of Ahmedabad coming out with the heat action plan, it did have, information on how do you create an early warning system, how do you communicate with the communities to tell them that, oh, there is going to be an extreme heat event and this is how you deal with heat. However, over the years, what we realized was that these plans are not data driven. So very recently, we came out with updated plans and using very, very granular city level data. The plans now are able to, one, tell you what is the vulnerability of the city and of the different zones within the city. And this is essentially at ward level. So at ward level, you are able to see which ward is more vulnerable in terms of heat compared to other wards. What this also helps in doing is identifying the hotspots within the city. That essentially tells the municipal and urban local bodies to deal with those areas in a much different way. Coming to interventions that are actually deployed on the ground, again, they vary now because we have data from the ground saying these 5 areas within the city are actually, heat hotspots. And in case of an extreme heat situation, they will be way more vulnerable compared to other parts of the city. So probably we need to have different interventions for these 5 areas. We need to have a different early response rate for these 5 areas. We need to have a different early mechanism to inform the communities for at least these areas. What this also tells us is that we need to train our municipal officials to ensure that they have all this information. One thing that came up with, so many years of working on this topic was that not everyone at the city level is trained and they have this information. So once your whatever approach or project you're working on is more data driven, you're able to support the communities, the city officials, other important stakeholders to ensure that they have the capacity to actually deal with such extreme weather events. And last, something that Graham also said, be seen. So it actually helps us to monitor what's happening on the ground. If the approach is not data driven, you are not able to monitor what's happening. And if you're able to monitor, even if something is going wrong, you're able to change and adapt to the situation and, change it maybe for the next instance. So that's why I would say data is very, very important in any approach that we take, especially related to extreme heats. And in this warming world, I think that is kind of the underlying thing that we should start work with.
Yes, Charu, I think data is something that has been a very big gap, at least in the Indian context. And of course, when we look at even the global data, I think at a lot of places, this kind of information at the municipal level is still missing. So I think if we are able to fill up these data gaps, I think it will bring a huge difference to the way we tackle the vulnerabilities of future. And of course, the second point that you made on capacities and how we train the municipal bodies, I think this should be I think in my opinion as well, that it should be a continuous process. And, it should keep happening in such a way that, the trainings and the way they're addressing the challenges, they should go hand in hand. And a lot of it would come if, a lot of the people that are getting on ground trainings, they have a little bit of exposure to the kind of sensitivities that they are dealing with. So I think a combination of them will definitely be of great help. So coming back to my, the co-host to this session, Karan. So I think we talked about, challenges of, how we have to look at developing the local level communities and how we are addressing data challenges at various levels. Partnerships will play a great role of how we design and look at the urban heat island resilience plans of future. So what in terms of the key role and partnerships that you think ISA will play in accelerating to build these capacities and the kind of knowledge exchange that will happen through ISA?
Thank you, Shabnam. I think let me start by first complimenting GRIHA for putting up a panel which is so diverse and brings together a variety of views together. At ISA, when we work across our 125 member countries, they're essentially in 4 buckets of economic transition as well as energy transitions. The high-income countries, the emerging economies, the least developed countries, and the small island states. Every archetype's developmental context is very, very different. In the emerging economies, the least developed countries, and the SIDS, a big chunk of the infrastructure is yet to be built. In ISA, we can't do it without the partners. Our secretariat is very, very lean, and working across all of these countries do not, it just doesn't work that way. So there are 2 thoughts that I will leave this panel with. And one of the things is around showcasing and demonstrating impact on the ground. A big part of what we are discussing is also enabling a behavior change in policymakers, in the users of the buildings, in academia, in technology providers. In the small island states, and the back wall in the hall today, right in front, is actually completely on something that we are doing at the small island states. 80%, well, in fact, not 80%, almost 100% in most of the islands, it's on imported diesel. The imported diesel bills are phenomenally high. But most of these countries are dependent on tourism for their economic activity. Can we start to look at architectural challenges to embed smart solar design into tourist homes, which is a direct economic impact, and start to see how we start to put this message across through a variety of, stakeholder audiences? Because I think some of the parts of an enabling partnership of the impact on the ground to understand that across our member countries is currently missing. I think the second thought that I would want to leave you with is, of course, capability building is a larger umbrella, and it can work across spectrum. But can we think of customized projectization level, development training that make the projects more financeable? So I think understanding plans, understanding data, all of that is important. But unless it has a developmental impact and an impact on the ground that can be showcased, moving the needle on action might be a little tough. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely a point well made that if you want to see the action on ground, it has to be a combination of all the things that we just mentioned. We have to have a good design. We need to have the data. We have to have the right expertise. And definitely what would give it a push is the right kind of incentives and policies that will take it to the logical end. And of course, the next point that you made, that how we bring in, the communities across the world and to look at some common features of, like the design competitions, and bring in some innovative ideas and solutions to, probably the small island nations or even have those kind of challenges which help to open up to new kind of thought process would definitely be a way forward and help to also connect in many ways. So thank you for bringing that perspective, Karan. And coming to the government perspective, you mentioned about how the local communities would play a very important role in in empowering and co-creating these heat challenges. So, is there any case study or are there any live examples in Kenya where we can see that how this implementation is really working? And if you feel that the kind of challenges that you have been able to overcome by engaging the local communities.
Thank you. We have different, as I said, we have different climatic conditions in Kenya. And of particular interest is the coastal region and the lake, what we are calling the lake region. Within the lake region, the weather is very harsh in relations to the rest of the world or the rest of the country. And therefore, the very lake region depends on fishing as a key economic activity in that region. And therefore, the issue around heating is a key component in relations to how then do we have the economic activity sustained for the local communities at that level. We have different engagements, we have different support that has come forward. Of course, in our governance structure at a country level, we have what we call the subnationals. So there's a lot of support that the subnationals have sought out there. And the better part of the support to most of these initiatives in terms of, the cooling and refrigerants comes in most of the areas that are not connected to power grids. So it is in most of those areas, whether in the lake regions or in some islands, because we still have some specific islands in Kenya that are not connected to grid. These are where better developments in terms of solarization has actually happened, and the sustainability component in relations to local adoption of the technology itself has actually led to widespread adoption of solar as a source of energy to even the other areas that are already connected to power and grid. In fact, in the other areas, there are cases of people abandoning, the national power supply system in place of what they have gone and seen. So it is possible that the value chain process of food supply, of medical supply, could still adopt alternative power sourcing model, in this case, solar. And we always encourage, in fact, the National Grid System organization, where we call it Kenya Power, has a lot of issues with more adoption, rather than the higher adoption of alternative energy sources in most of the areas that they have been looking forward to expand their market into. So we have cases of good programs that have adopted solar as an alternative sourcing, especially being driven by the community leaders, by the communities, by the participants, and everyone in that particular. We talk about good health, good examples in the agriculture sector, as I said, or the food supply chain process. The health sector has really reaped big in this. The extreme areas still enjoy good heating in terms of, the thermal comfort of our buildings, and quite a number of other sectors have actually adopted this. Most of these initiatives are locally led by local leaders for local developments in their own local solutions. Thank you very much.
Right. I think rightly mentioned that how local solutions are getting replicated even when in those areas where there are already grid connections, and how they're finding it more useful to be solarizing their cities rather than relying on the grid power. So I think I'm sure there's a lot of work that's already done, and I'm sure there's a long way to go and look at how we can make these policies more robust and more useful for the end user. So thank you for bringing that perspective as well. So Grammy, we also talked about technology a while ago, and AI is going to play a very critical role in the upcoming smart systems and how the industry is going to adopt them. So how do you see the refrigeration and cooling sector adopting AI to the extent that becomes like a technology of tomorrow?
Thanks very much. I'm just going to start with my image of going to a hotel room. And when I go into the hotel room, there's a thermostat on the wall and it's always turned down to the minimum. Do you get this? Do you experience this? You do. And so this is a thermostat in the wall that's controlling the temperature in the space, and it doesn't control it because it doesn't work. And that's the starting point of where we shouldn't be. And where we can potentially go is somewhere very, very different, because AI opens up amazing opportunities for us. And I was talking to Akash earlier about when I went to Delhi a couple of years back, and I went to the IIT, Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi, and they told me about some of the research that they were doing. And this research allowed you to sort of profile someone's image. Okay, so me sitting here, okay, the camera would profile my image, and depending on my image, it could tell me whether I was comfortable, cold, warm. And this was 3 or 4 years ago. This was happening, and that would be my vision, is to actually, rather than have some rubbish thermostat that's turned down, actually having sensors that could image me, and I'm cold, or I'm relaxed. It would actually be able to tell whether I'm comfortable and learn whether I'm comfortable. And I think that is a really amazing opportunity that we need to exploit. That's one example. But there is a risk as well. Okay, because AI uses data centers, and data centers use a lot of energy. Okay, in the UK, there's 198 data centers that we've got data on, and these use about 10 terawatt hours, a really big number. If you go to Ireland, Ireland's just off the UK. Currently, 20% of all electricity goes into data centers. 20%. By 2030, the predictions are a third, 33%. By 2080, 75% of all energy is going to go into data centers. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. In some ways, it will help us, but we also need to be mindful of the additional energy. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. AI is something that's its advantages and disadvantages, and how mindfully we use this technology for making a more resilient plan for a future is something that will be very interesting to see in the coming years. So coming to the next question, and that's from the technology and of course from the implementation point of view. What are some of the promising examples of climate responsive materials or design innovations or smart technology mitigation urban heat island impacts that you have probably used in your projects?
Thank you so much for that question. I think I should iterate that I want to start by saying that we're often looking for the solution or the new technology to incorporate to save the day. But I want to say that what we're trying to do at SOM is to try to design intelligently. We're trying to bring together existing solutions, existing technologies. I know this is not your question yet, but I want to iterate that I think it's important to be aware of new technologies and embrace them and test them and use them. But it's not. But I think we should not wait for new technologies to emerge to be able to deliver solutions that can be implemented tomorrow, because we already have the tools, we already have the knowledge, I hope, and we already have the technologies. It's about intelligently bringing them together. But some of the sort of most common, I think, materials, at least that we use today in a lot of our projects, is porous pavement materials, or I mentioned the blue-green infrastructure solutions of vegetation, or bringing water wherever it's needed, where it's suitable in terms of climate. Those are the key sort of go-to solutions we have in terms of materials and tools. But I think it's about the combination of, like, if we have this menu of items of things, for us, the success comes from the intelligent design, intelligent planning, and that is very locally and contextually appropriate. I think that's the key solution that we're always striving to deliver for longer term success and benefits that that solution, that holistic solution can bring to the communities. And I should also mention, maybe there has been a lot of discussions around data, and it's really important to leverage data so that we can fine tune any technologies, any smart solutions, sensors, and so forth that we may be incorporating to help us to design better and to close those feedback loops, to design better, not for this project, but for the multiple projects in the future, is something that we are striving to embed in every single project, because we also believe that it's important to learn from failures, and we all will fail eventually. But I see that as a good opportunity to improve and to deliver sort of to build on the solutions that exist today and to create more intelligent, integrative solutions of the future. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I think, Meena, you made a very valid point that the solutions that we choose today are going to be embedded in the projects, for the next 30, 40 years. So, data will play a very important role. And at GRIHA Council, what uniquely we are doing for the materials is that we have prepared a repository of, materials that we have verified the claims that they've made. And, a user or a designer can pick up these materials and use it in their designs, and also do a little bit of combinations and see what best fits into their design. So there's a little bit of trial that we do in India, and we try to implement that in our projects as well. So thank you for bringing that perspective. So Charu, last question, but I'm sure there is a lot that we can talk on that as well. So the first school roof policy that was implemented by NRDC in India, and I'm sure at the policy level, it looks everything quite well, designed and, very, very well thought policy. But, when we go at the implementation level, we feel the challenges and kind of tweaking we need to do to the policy to make it more implementable. So what are your thoughts on those policies and the implementation challenges that may arise, and how do you look at tackling them in future?
Thanks for that, Shabnam. And I want to start with, something that Meena also alluded to. Cool roofs is a passive cooling design. It is a traditional technology that communities have been using, painting their roofs white or putting tiles on their roofs just to ensure that, the temperature goes down by a few degrees and there is better thermal comfort. So completely agree with what you said, traditional technologies, there is a lot that is there. And there is a lot that needs to be leveraged while looking at, newer innovations that are coming our way. Having said that, Shabnam, you alluded to the Telangana cool roof policy that NRDC helped draft, and clearly completely agree with you. Drafting a policy and getting it released is the first step. I think the bigger challenge is ensuring that it is being enforced and it is being implemented and it's being accepted by the communities. So there were definitely a few things that we're planning to do, and I feel that should be done in general for policies and enforced implementation of those policies. Specifically in terms of cool roof policy, we believe first is the availability of materials and availability of vendors. Currently in India, we do have vendors, but we really need to see how many of them are supplying quality materials. That becomes very, very important. Second is having skilled workforce. Do we have workforce that actually knows how to use this newer technology, how to apply the paint, how many coats of paint, how to set up membranes if it's a membrane-based cool roof system or if it's a tile-based system? Then coming to testing of such technologies, since these technologies are newer and this is the first state level policy that came out in India, has immense potential of being scaled across all the states in the country. The challenge remains, we don't have enough testing facilities to actually see what is the impact of cool roofs. Are they able to create the impact that we all, on paper are envisaging? We do have pilots that have calculated the impact, but we don't have scaled impact calculations that are definitely needed once you have a policy out. Third is, regular testing. Once the technologies are implemented, and since this is happening for the first time, we really need to ensure that they are passing the test of time. After having been implemented, are they still, because all these technologies are implemented on the roofs. They are in, extreme sunlight. So are they able to sustain the life cycle that was thought through? And if not, then how do we need to, rework the quality or the technology? And last is definitely, which is a part of implementation, is working closely with the communities. One, ensuring that we are doing enough capacity building and awareness so that the communities know what these technologies are and why they need to be implemented. Second, I would say, especially for lower income households, cool roofs still have a relatively higher upfront cost. So we really need to think through that through such policies, how are we able to provide at least the additional support that's needed for, initial implementation, and maybe innovative financial mechanisms that can help scaled implementation.
Thanks, Charu, for bringing that perspective, that how we bridge that gap between policies and implementation, and how at NRDC you're not only looking at building capacities at local levels, but also engaging the local communities to make those implementable solutions. So with this, I think I come to the end of my questions that I have to ask the panelists, but I'll open the floor for more questions from you. And if you could just identify yourself and to whom the question is addressed to. With a show of hands, if you can have questions. Yes.
Hello, my name is Pablo from the Solar Energy Association of Paraguay. For Professor Grama Maitment, you were speaking about the increase of energy consumption regarding different new technologies. How much percentage of that is AI? How much is crypto energy, crypto mining? Sorry. And what would you recommend? Because in our case, we had also a very big increase. We were supposed to have a shortage of energy in Paraguay around 2040. Now people are talking we are going to have a shortage of energy by 2030. So what would you recommend the Paraguayan government to do, and us as a solar association to do regarding this scenario?
So thanks very much for the question. And my understanding of your question is, how do you get a better understanding of the energy that's going into AI and future projections?
Yes, yes.
And then maybe what you do about it. Okay. So we've done some studies in the UK. It is really, really difficult to get good numbers, really difficult. Okay. But there are certain data sources that we can use. Okay. Some of the big data centers have a requirement to give us their energy consumption. So the 198 data centers that I mentioned, they have to do it legally. Also, for planning applications, okay, so to get planning permission for a new building, there is a planning register as well, which we can interrogate. And the third one is, in order to get the power supply to the new data center, there has to be a request. So you can look forward maybe, well, you get reasonably good understanding of the big data centers today. You can probably look forward 5 years. After that, it's very difficult to work out what's going to happen. We have a saying, we don't have a crystal ball. We cannot look into the future that far. But what to do about it, okay, is I think we have to think about our data centers and how we design them. And we need to try to passively cool them where we can. So this comes back to the first question. Okay, we need to use ambient air to cool them where we can. We need to use the heat that's produced from data centers, perhaps to heat our homes as well. So we should maybe use the heat bivalently, but efficiency is probably the most critical thing here. But it's a lovely question. Really nice to hear from you, and happy to chat to you more. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So it's not actually a question, but I am very pleased to be here. Here in Belen, I'm a local, and here in Belen, we have had increasing from solar energy in the last few years. We are a state that produce a lot of energy, but because of some laws in Brazil, our energy is one of the most expensive from all the country, even if we are one of the states that produce the most energy. So it's very how can I say, it's very important, the solar energy, and it's becoming very popular here. So in the last few years, there's a plenty of houses and companies. There are installing in their facilities. And I'm very thankful to be here. It was very elucidating. And thank you all.
I would like to, I would like to concur with what she has said. In fact, in most countries, energy access has been an issue across board. And I think worldwide, that itself has given an opportunity for accelerated use of solar as alternative energy. In fact, if you conduct survey, especially to our universities and other research organizations, why people and institutions prefer the use of solar as alternative energy, if you're to get data around that, you realize the issue around high costs of the national grid power really deters continued use of that national grid power. So in itself, in any case, if today we had, if we had easy access to national grid, we may not even have been here in the first place. I don't know, but it is a prohibitive engagement that governments needs to look into, so that they could sustain the two models of energy funding or energy supply. Otherwise, we are still having the same issue even in our own regions, especially in Africa, where the most regions, most counties, most communities that actually generate the very same power get the power the last. Okay? That seems to be a global issue that is not necessarily in Belém. So I don't know whether that is politics or how can manage that. But it's a cross-cutting issue. But I believe the issue of solar and power access in terms of alternative power supply is giving run for money for our own governments where Kennedy serves. So it is a way of encouraging governments to also look into and understand where the issues are, whether these are bureaucratic issues, whether these are the existing laws that we have, so that we can revitalize and ensure that we have the balance of alternative energy and the national grid. Thank you.
So I've been looking around the room at you all and thinking, why are you here? Okay, and I was really pleased that you put your hand up and asked a question, because it tells me a lot. It tells me that you're engaged. Okay, you want to be here, and that's very, very powerful. So really well done for that. Okay, and carry on asking, putting your hand up and asking those questions, and that's to you all. Okay, do it. And in 40 years time, okay, when you're old like me, okay, you will remember this day. You will remember this conference. You will remember, and it will be really formative in your life. So well done. Thank you for asking the question.
Thank you. And I think with this, we come to the end of this panel discussion. And I would like to thank all the panelists for bringing that perspective and sharing their journey and the kind of experience that they have had in this discussions. So thank you all once again. And I look forward to staying connected with all of you. Thank you.